The Eight-Headed Nightmare, the Saga of Yamata-no-Orochi Part I, the exile of the Storm God. The story begins not with a monster, but with a fallen god. Susanoo, the god of storms and seas, had been cast out of the high celestial planes by his sister, the sun goddess Amaterasu. He was a god of chaos, a wild spirit who didn't fit into the golden palaces of heaven. He descended to the land of Izumo, a place where the mountains touch the clouds and the rivers run cold. As he walked along the banks of the high river, Susanoo felt the weight of his mortality. He was no longer a celestial being, he was a wanderer on a broken earth, but the silence of the river was broken by a sound that even a storm god found unsettling, the sound of a family weeping. Not a loud cry of war, but a hollow, exhausted sob of those who have lost everything. Part 2, the shadow over the river. Susanoo followed the sound and found an elderly couple and their young daughter, Kusanagi. They were huddled together in a small hut, their faces pale with terror. "Why do you weep?" Susanoo asked, his voice like distant thunder. The old man, a minor earthly deity, looked up. "Lord, every year, a nightmare descends from the mountains. It has eyes like red winter plums. It has a body that stretches across 8 valleys and 8 peaks. Moss and trees grow on its back, and its belly is forever raw and bloody with the gore of its victims." It was Yamata-no-Orochi. For 7 years, the serpent had come, and every year it had devoured one of their daughters. Now, only Kusanagi remained. Tomorrow, the mountain would move, and the 8th daughter would be gone. Part 3, the strategy of the fallen. Susanoo was a warrior, but he looked at the girl and saw something worth saving. He realized that brute force alone would not kill a beast that was a mountain itself. He needed a plan that combined divine cunning with human craftsmanship. "I will slay this beast," Susanoo declared. "But in return, the girl shall be my wife." The parents agreed instantly. Susanoo then did something strange. He transformed Kusanagi into a multicolored comb and tucked her into his hair, hiding her essence from the serpent's magical senses. Then, he commanded the family to build a fence with 8 gates. Behind each gate, they were to place a platform, and on each platform, a vat filled with 8-fold refined sake, Soshiori no sake. This wasn't just alcohol, it was a brew so potent it could dull the senses of a god. Part 4, the arrival of the beast. The earth began to tremble. The birds fled the forest, and the river turned dark. From the 8 valleys, the 8 heads appeared. Each head was as large as a temple, with fangs like jagged obsidian. The serpent didn't see Susanoo. It saw the 8 gates. It smelled the intoxicating aroma of the refined sake. The beast was ancient and powerful, but it was also driven by an insatiable hunger and a fatal arrogance. Each of the 8 heads plunged into a different vat. They drank until the vats were dry. They drank until the red eyes began to glaze over. The mountain-sized body began to sway. One by one, the 8 heads fell to the ground in a drunken stupor. The nightmare was asleep. Part V, the dance of the 10-span sword. Susanoo drew his legendary sword, the Tatsuka no Tsurugi. He didn't scream a battle cry. He moved with the precision of a master calligrapher. He began to hack the serpent to pieces. He cut through the necks, the scales, and the bloody belly. The high river turned red, flowing into the sea like a ribbon of blood. As he reached the 4th tail, his blade struck something hard. Something divine. He sliced open the tail and found a magnificent sword hidden within the flesh of the monster. This was the Kusanagi no Tsurugi, the grass-cutting sword. Susanoo realized this was no ordinary monster. The serpent had been carrying a piece of the world's destiny inside it. Part 6, the legacy of the sword. Susanoo presented the Kusanagi sword to his sister, Amaterasu, as a peace offering. This blade would eventually become one of the 3 imperial regalia of Japan, a symbol of the emperor's divine right to rule. Susanoo and Kusanagi returned to her human form, built a palace in Izumo. As the clouds rose above the mountains, Susanoo composed the first waka poem in history, celebrating the 8-fold fence that protected his love. Part 7, the roar of the 8 valleys. The air in the Izumo Valley grew thick with the smell of fermentation and ancient, rotting earth. Yamata-no-Orochi had arrived. Each of its 8 heads was a separate nightmare. One had eyes of burning coal, another had skin like jagged obsidian, and the third breathed a mist that withered every flower it touched. As the beast began to drink the 8-fold refined sake, The ground literally groaned under its weight. Susanoo, hidden behind a massive cedar tree, watched as the monster's movements became sluggish. The terrifying roar of the serpent turned into a low, thundering snore that shook the leaves from the trees. "Now," Susanoo whispered, the comb in his hair, which was the transformed Princess Kusanagi, glowing with a faint, protective light. Part 8, The Butcher of Gods. Susanoo leapt from his hiding place. He didn't look like a man, he looked like a whirlwind. His sword, the Tatsuki-no-Tsurugi, flashed like lightning in the twilight. The battle was not a duel, it was a slaughter. Susanoo ran along the back of the serpent, which was so wide it felt like a mountain path. He began to sever the heads one by one. With every strike, a fountain of dark, mystical blood erupted, turning the high river into a river of fire and wine. The serpent's heads tried to snap at him in their drunken stupor, but they were too slow. Susanoo was a blur of steel. He hacked through the necks, through the moss-covered scales, until only the massive, writhing tails remained. Part 9, The Secret in the Tail. As Susanoo began to clear the remains, he struck the fourth tail of the beast. Instead of the soft sound of flesh, there was a sharp, divine clang. His sword, a weapon of the gods, actually chipped. Curious, Susanoo sliced the tail open. From the bloody depths of the monster, a blinding light emerged. It was a sword, cold, straight, and radiating a power that made the storm god's own heart tremble. This was the Kusanagi-no-Tsurugi, the grass-cutting sword. The serpent hadn't just been a monster, it had been a living prison for one of the three most powerful artifacts in existence. By killing the beast, Susanoo hadn't just saved a girl, he had released the destiny of Japan. Part X, the first poem in the eternal peace. The storm cleared. The sun, controlled by his sister Amaterasu, broke through the clouds for the first time in Izumo. Susanoo, covered in the blood of the serpent, looked at the girl he had saved. He transformed the comb back into Kusanagi. They built a palace in the clouds of Izumo. As he looked at the fences they had built to trap the beast, Susanoo felt a strange peace. He composed a poem that every Japanese child still knows today: 8 clouds rise in Izumo. An 8-fold fence to enclose my wife. Oh, that 8-fold fence. This was the first waka poem ever written. The god of storms had finally found his home, not in the chaos of the sky, but in the quiet love of the earth.